To the world, Johnny Carson was the charming king of late-night television, the man who made millions laugh every night with ease. But behind the cameras was a very different personality. Carson valued loyalty, respect, and control above everything else, and anyone who crossed the line often paid a heavy price. One wrong move could end a friendship, damage a career, or close his doors forever. Today, we're revealing the 8 celebrities who angered Carson so deeply, they were never welcomed back. Number 1. Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers was not just another comedian appearing on The Tonight Show. She was one of Johnny Carson's closest protégés and one of the few performers he personally helped turn into a star. At a time when female comedians struggled to be taken seriously, Carson gave Rivers something priceless: credibility. He regularly invited her onto the show, praised her talent, and eventually made her the first permanent guest host in the program's history. To many people in Hollywood, that meant Carson saw her as the future. Over the years, their relationship became more than professional. Rivers often spoke about how much Carson's support meant to her. He had opened doors no one else would open. But in the mid-1980s, everything changed when a new television network approached Rivers with a massive offer: her own late-night talk show, airing directly against Carson. For Joan Rivers, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. It meant money, independence, and security in an industry that rarely protected women as they got older. But accepting the deal also meant competing with the man who had helped build her career. Rivers reportedly struggled with how to tell Carson, delaying the conversation again and again. Then disaster struck. Before she could speak with him personally, news of the deal leaked to the press. Carson learned about it through headlines instead of hearing it from Rivers herself. To a man who valued loyalty above almost everything, it felt like a deep personal betrayal. Those close to the show said Carson was devastated. He didn't scream or create a scene. Instead, he quietly cut ties. Rivers was no longer welcome on The Tonight Show. Her name was rarely mentioned, and the friendship was effectively over overnight. Joan Rivers tried for years to repair the damage. She reached out multiple times, hoping for forgiveness, but Carson never responded. The silence lasted for decades. Number 2. Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton was one of the most recognizable entertainers in America, known for his smooth voice, Las Vegas success, and polished image. During the 1970s, he was also a frequent target of Johnny Carson's monologue jokes. Carson often teased celebrities in his opening routine, and Newton's flashy style, youthful appearance, and larger-than-life persona made him an easy subject. At first, the jokes were seen as harmless late-night comedy. But over time, Newton reportedly grew tired of being used as punchline material. Matters became far more serious when some of the jokes crossed into personal territory, including rumors and suggestions that could damage an entertainer's reputation during that era. Instead of sending a manager or making a quiet complaint, Wayne Newton decided to confront Carson directly. According to stories from people around the show, Newton arrived backstage at NBC and made his way straight to Carson's office before a taping. What happened next became one of the most talked-about confrontations in Tonight Show history. Newton reportedly told Carson that jokes about his music or appearance were one thing, but if the personal attacks continued, there would be consequences. Some accounts even claim he threatened Carson physically if another joke was made. For Johnny Carson, that crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. He was known for staying calm under pressure. But he also demanded control and respect inside his own world. Being challenged privately was one thing. Being threatened in his own office was something else entirely. Witnesses said Carson remained composed, ordered Newton out, and ended the conversation immediately. But once the door closed, the decision had already been made. Wayne Newton would never again be welcomed back as a guest on The Tonight Show during Carson's reign. The fallout was significant. Number 3. Charles Grodin. Charles Grodin was intelligent, sharp, and known for a dry sense of humor that made him stand out from ordinary Hollywood guests. On paper, he seemed like the perfect match for The Tonight Show. He was quick-witted, unpredictable, and capable of creating memorable television with almost no effort. But what began as a clever comedy bit slowly turned into one of Johnny Carson's most uncomfortable guest relationships. When Grodin first appeared on the show, he introduced a unique style. Instead of playing the friendly celebrity promoting a movie, he acted difficult, dismissive, and slightly irritated with Carson. He challenged questions, acted uninterested, and created tension that made the audience laugh. Carson, a master of improvisation, handled it beautifully. Their awkward chemistry felt fresh and entertaining, so Grodin was invited back again, but with every return appearance, the act became sharper. What once felt playful started to feel hostile. Grodin would interrupt Carson, question whether he had prepared for the interview, and suggest he did not truly care about his guests. While some viewers saw it as comedy, others could not tell whether the tension was real. That uncertainty became the problem. Carson liked humor, but he also valued order and respect on his set. According to people close to the production, the breaking point came during one later appearance when Grodin's remarks became more personal than funny. He reportedly mocked Carson's delivery and hinted that the host was simply going through the motions for a paycheck. Those comments touched a sensitive nerve. Carson had spent decades building the image of a warm, effortless host. Suggesting that his charm was fake or mechanical challenged the very persona he had created. As always, Carson stayed professional on camera. He smiled, finished the segment, and gave no obvious sign of anger. Number 4. Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters was one of Hollywood's most respected actresses, a two-time Academy Award winner with a career filled with classic films and unforgettable performances. She was talented, outspoken, and known for having a larger-than-life personality. On talk shows, that energy often created entertaining moments. But behind the scenes, many in the industry also knew she could be unpredictable. By the mid-1970s, Winters had appeared on The Tonight Show several times. She was a natural storyteller who could keep audiences laughing with tales from old Hollywood. Johnny Carson appreciated guests who could entertain without much effort, and Shelley usually delivered exactly that. But staff members reportedly grew nervous whenever she was booked because her mood could change quickly, especially if alcohol was involved. During one appearance, trouble began almost immediately. According to stories from crew members, Winters walked on stage seeming distracted and unsteady. Her speech was slower than usual, and she appeared irritated from the start. Carson tried to guide the interview carefully, asking simple questions and giving her room to settle in. But the conversation kept drifting, with Winters interrupting, changing topics, and responding unpredictably. Then came the moment no one expected. Carson made what was intended to be a light joke, something similar to humor Winters herself had used in the past. But this time, instead of laughing, she suddenly snapped. In front of the studio audience and cameras, Winters reportedly grabbed her drink and threw it directly at Carson. The audience gasped. Ice, liquid, and shock hit all at once. Carson, known for remarkable composure, immediately called for a commercial break. Witnesses said he stood up drenched, expressionless, and walked off stage without saying a word. That silence was said to be more intimidating than shouting. Number 5. Rich Little. Rich Little was once considered one of Johnny Carson's most trusted and frequently invited guests. As an impressionist, he had a rare talent for mimicking celebrities and politicians with uncanny accuracy. Between the late 1960s and 1970s, he appeared on The Tonight Show dozens of times and was a consistent audience favorite. For years, it seemed like he was part of the show's regular family of performers. Unlike other guests who disappeared after a single dramatic incident, Rich Little's exit was far more subtle. There was no public argument, no backstage confrontation, and no single moment the cameras could point to. Instead, his presence on the show simply started fading away until one day he was no longer invited at all. People working behind the scenes later described it as a quiet separation. His name still appeared on suggestion lists, but it kept getting passed over. Other guests were booked, schedules filled up, and Little slowly stopped appearing without any official explanation. what made the situation more complicated was that Rich Little continued to work successfully elsewhere. He was still appearing on television, performing live shows, and maintaining a strong career. So the question remained, why did The Tonight Show suddenly move on from him? According to insiders, the reason was not a single incident but a growing frustration on Carson's side. Off camera, Little reportedly had a habit of staying in performance mode all the time. He would constantly do impressions even during rehearsals, breaks, and casual conversations. While audiences found this entertaining for a few minutes, Carson had to experience it for much longer periods behind the scenes. Over time, what seemed like charm began to feel exhausting. Carson valued genuine personality when the cameras were off, and he reportedly felt that Little never fully switched off the act. Number 6. Truman Capote. Truman Capote was once one of the most brilliant literary voices in America, known for masterpieces like Breakfast at Tiffany's and In Cold Blood. He was famous for his sharp intelligence, witty personality, and elegant way of speaking. For years, Capote had been a favorite guest on talk shows because he could turn any conversation into something entertaining and insightful, but by the mid-1970s, that image had started to break down. When Capote appeared on The Tonight Show in 1975, something was immediately wrong. According to crew members, he looked unsteady even before sitting down. His movements were slow, his focus seemed off, and his speech lacked the clarity he was known for. Johnny Carson noticed it right away. Unlike casual comedy guests, Capote's condition was impossible to ignore. Carson had a clear rule when it came to his show: guests had to be coherent and in control. He believed millions of viewers were inviting him into their homes every night, and he had a responsibility not to embarrass them with an unprofessional appearance. As the interview began, it quickly became uncomfortable. Capote struggled to complete sentences, lost track of his thoughts, and drifted into stories that made little sense. Carson tried to steer the conversation gently, asking simple questions and attempting to keep things on track, but nothing worked. The situation escalated when Capote began sharing a story that became increasingly inappropriate for television. At that point, Carson made a quick decision. He cut the segment short and went to an early commercial break. Behind the scenes, witnesses say Carson quietly confronted Capote during the break, telling him he was not in a condition to continue. Capote reportedly insisted he was fine, but his condition proved otherwise. When the show returned, Carson ended the interview in a controlled and respectful manner, but the damage was already done. Number 7. Smothers Brothers. Tom and Dick Smothers, known as the Smothers Brothers, were not just comedians, they were cultural voices of their time. Their variety show on CBS had made them extremely popular in the 1960s, especially because they mixed music, comedy, and bold political commentary. At a time when most television avoided controversy, they openly addressed issues like the Vietnam War and government authority. Johnny Carson respected talent, and he had no personal issue with the Smothers Brothers' success. They had appeared on The Tonight Show before and were considered strong entertainers. But Carson's program had a very specific identity. It was designed to be a break from daily stress. Not a platform for political debate. That difference in philosophy slowly created tension. By 1970, political divisions in America were growing sharper, and the Smothers Brothers were becoming more outspoken. During one appearance on The Tonight Show, what was expected to be a light entertainment segment reportedly shifted into political commentary. Instead of sticking to comedy, Tom Smothers began expressing strong anti-war views on air. For Johnny Carson, this was a problem. He was a professional who carefully controlled the tone of his show. Guests were briefed beforehand about what the segment would include, and sudden changes were something he disliked deeply. On camera, Carson remained calm and continued the interview without showing frustration. His smile stayed in place, but those who knew him closely said his mood changed immediately. He did not like being put in a position where his show turned into something unexpected. After the episode, there was no public fight or dramatic fallout. Instead, something quieter happened. The Smothers Brothers simply stopped being invited as frequently. Their appearances became rare, and eventually they disappeared from the guest lineup altogether. Number 8. Morton Downey Jr. Morton Downey Jr. was one of the most controversial television personalities of the 1980s. Loud, aggressive, and intentionally provocative, he built his fame on confrontation. His talk show was nothing like traditional late-night television. Instead of calm interviews, it featured shouting matches, heated arguments, and audience chaos. Cigarette in hand, Downey often encouraged conflict rather than conversation. Johnny Carson represented the exact opposite style of hosting. For him, late-night television was about control, timing, humor, and smooth conversation. He valued elegance and restraint, while Downey thrived on disorder. Because of this contrast, many people in television industry saw their eventual meeting as inevitable, a collision between two completely different eras of broadcasting. When Morton Downey Jr. was invited onto The Tonight Show in 1988, it was already a controversial decision behind the scenes. Some staff members felt his style did not belong on Carson's stage, while others believed it was important to acknowledge his rising popularity. From the moment Downey entered the studio, the energy was tense. Instead of following traditional guest behavior, he immediately engaged the audience, moving around the set and playing to the crowd as if he were the host. This disrupted the usual flow of Carson's controlled environment. As the interview began, Downey continued his aggressive style. He interrupted questions, spoke over Carson, and redirected attention toward himself. Carson tried to guide the conversation with his usual calm professionalism, but Downey repeatedly ignored the structure of the interview. Things escalated when Downey began criticizing other talk show hosts, implying that they lacked courage or authenticity. Although he did not name Carson directly, the message was clear enough for everyone in the room.